Start our programs committee meeting, and you have the agenda, Dr. Malakar, so if you'd like to begin.
Okay, just a couple of updates on professional development for next year with the new programs that we started and will be starting. So Wit and Wisdom that we implemented last year, which is our K2 reading program. We asked teachers to implement with Fidelity last year. They did a really nice job. We're going to run some learning labs for 25-26. That's where teachers of the similar grade levels get together and they work on their practice, watching each other teach, talking about requirements for the program. So we're going to do some of that next year for those guys. And we do have some concerns with the writing scope and sequence. Not so much that it's not rigorous enough, but rather we think, after talking with Abby Hartman, that there is, the teachers don't see the vertical alignment, so this is going to be a focus next year, is that writing piece, partially through these learning labs, and partially on some of our PD days. So those are some things we're working on to follow up
on the learning labs. Is that in grade level, across buildings, or just in your?
It'll probably be a mix of several different things as the year goes on, as we see a need and where we need to fill those gaps.
Okay, good. All right.
Benchmark training starts in August, so teachers will have that training. That's our 3 through 6 program, and then we will continue that also throughout the year. They will not be doing the learning labs or anything like that because this will be their first year of implementation. So it will be more of a how can we support you in this first year kind of thing.
And did they got the materials?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right.
CPM training, we had our first couple of days for both groups, which included 6 through 8 teachers before the end of the school year. And then our honors teachers went down had to go to Columbus because they got a different training. They use different materials, and that will continue also next year. So we'll have one day in August for all of them, and then we have a couple of days scheduled throughout the year. So support for teachers in that area.
And
so
this is where Katie's working with them?
Katie attended the training, yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So she'll follow through with the...
I don't know. I think we'll have to see who the instructional coach is, and there may be some handing off of that responsibility to the instructional coach.
The transition.
Yep.
Okay. And I saw that was posted.
Yes.
Okay.
25-26 professional development calendar. We're going to focus, just so you're aware, continue our focus on personalized learning and MTSS. And added on there was including the advancement of students at the higher end. We are still, so that is a focus, but right now we're still working on the MTSS portion of getting, so we have it pretty good at the elementary level. We're getting there at the middle school level. We're just in the beginning stages at the high school level. So at all levels, we won't be. We are
running some, like a gifted, an identified gifted, what do they call that, advisory at Lamuth, where they take the students who are identified as gifted.
Yes, they do something different there.
Do some kind of gifted advisory type work that way. Those are our honors classes, but then they also kind of pull together to do that. And then obviously, we're continuing to offer and expand our advanced coursework in the high school with not only AP courses, but then with all the Lakeland at Riverside next year and all the classes we're bringing on campus. And
Bless you.
Provide more advanced opportunity.
Right, and then what about elementary?
So at elementary, we are, Julie Weber is working and training our staff in gifted to get them, so they are gifted certified to provide different interventions, but it's more of an individual. And that is an area where we need to grow.
Gifted credentialed.
We
talked about that. And that's a weird thing, but language is important because the certification is different than, so Julie Weber has the gifted certification through the state of Ohio. Teachers can get credentialed through having so much professional development over the course of a couple of years. So we have run over the past few years gifted PD. They do book studies and things like that. Julie runs some smaller groups for teachers who are interested in. But remembering that at the elementary level, as far as MTSS goes, we are just now implementing Branching Minds, which is the data collection and reporting program. We didn't have it at all of them. So we have to roll that out, and the teachers have to get used to doing that before we can start focusing solely on the other end. So we got some work to do at the elementary level too.
They are grouping students though into, like they are cluster grouping gifted students into teachers who have those credentials.
Okay.
So that they are counted as served. That is another thing that we are doing, but that's the more the second half of next year into 26, 27 will be the
There's
next.
also new gifted operating standards
Which is
that
awesome.
go into effect July 1st. And so we have updated our identification and our service plan. And those will probably need to be board approved at the end of July, the July board meeting at the end of the month. But that's all ready, but that doesn't go into effect till July 1st. And there are some changes to the operating standards for gifted.
Okay, but we'll be able to review that before, you know.
It'll be a
see it.
policy change, so it'll come to
Yeah,
policy.
okay,
We'll wait
it's
for
policy.
Neola to
Okay,
give us that, and then we'll go from there.
yeah, and I know there's grade acceleration or subject acceleration.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
The science courses of study are the last group to be approved. The link is in the agenda, so both of you, if you want to get a look at it beforehand, it's going to go out in the Friday packet to the rest of the board this week, and then we'll be on the June agenda. I just wanted you guys to have it first,
Okay,
okay? And that'll be the same process that we followed for all the rest of them, okay?
okay,
Just a note on that, there will have to be some work done next year. We'll probably hit language arts first and redo the K2 based on wisdom, 3-6 based on benchmark advance, based on the new curriculums that we have. I don't know that we will redo the 6-8 math curriculum, maybe towards the end of the year. I need to let the teachers get in and get their hands dirty a little
Yeah.
bit with it before we really put it down on paper, the scope and sequence. Anybody who would have an interest in it, you know what I mean, like, you can come up and look at the books, that's not a problem. But as far as putting down exactly what it looks like month to month at Riverside, I think we gotta get a year in before we revamp those curriculums.
so with these curriculums, I mean, because basically the standards haven't changed, it's just the materials and how the scope and sequence
Yep.
part of it, okay.
Yep.
All right,
Yeah, so it'll be just a change of what the units and the modules
Right.
look like, not a change in the standards.
Right.
The standards have stayed, the same,
consistent, yeah.
standard, as it were.
Yeah.
I know Denise, you had expressed some concern about the scope of the curriculum supervisor's duties. So just to let you know that as far as the evaluation, although those pieces will be all on there, there will be areas that Katie won't be evaluated in. And one of the things that she's not going to focus on will be the college and career readiness.
Okay,
So that's gonna come off, and someone else will help and take the lead in that area. Her focus will be data, benchmarking through the central reporting system, data analysis, and then instructional rounds, and the data analysis from that. So that'll be her focus. So we're not gonna change the job description. Her evaluation will just focus on those things that she's responsible for.
right, and the current instructional coaches, or the one to be named that takes her place, those are the people she'll be working with too. Right.
She will be working with
Yeah.
to make sure that they are there. She is going to head up the rounds program
Okay,
though, and make sure that rounds are put consistently throughout all of our schools.
okay,
That's a big focus for us this year, is to get our staff into others' classrooms to see kind of best practices and to see kind of different ways of approaching
okay,
even some of the same content, but also it gets them scope and vertical alignment as well. With the goal of our staff going into other buildings
mhm,
eventually.
right. Okay,
I'm gonna let Chris take over? Well, let's do.
Hey, why don't we do that
the-
last?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll do the OST results. So special ed and general ed assignments, that's a
I added
personnel
that.
thing.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean,
that's not a Melissa thing,
it
so
said special ed assignments on,
that was Cheryl.
Did I put that on there?
You put special
I
ed,
just
yeah.
saw it and I just thought, well, how we're general ed, I don't know.
I didn't put
I wonder if
special ed
Mallory
assignments.
put that on there.
She would
I
not have
can-
put anything on the program. She didn't even have access to the programs.
Well, I didn't put anything on the agenda, but I can give you an update as to where we are.
We are having some resignations, so we're moving some internal
Mhm.
people around and posting. That's,
I saw some of your notes on that.
yeah.
Okay, so some things are posted, I saw Mallory put on.
We are at the point where anything that comes through now, we have to replace.
Yeah.
Put it on there.
Okay,
And we're posting some with long-term, some with, some are internal moves based on preference, and then some are just, we're moving some for best fit. But I think we ended up reducing between 8 and 10 positions, I don't have the exact number.
okay. And I know you said some were long-term subs,
We are,
or
we're-
if people left, we didn't replace.
A lot of them were retirements and long-term subs, we did a lot of, moving around and not replacing, with the majority of the reductions coming at the high school level. Obviously, the one at Buckeye, potentially 2, so,
Mhm. Okay,
but those we transferred and they were long-terms.
okay. All right, and that kind of goes into the kindergarten numbers, I was looking at the latest.
Yeah, they're pretty
stuff.
steady. The latest update, Buckeye's got 28, so 2 sections. Melridge has 34, so that's 2 sections. Parkside has 69 for 4, and Riverside has 70 for 4. And Buckeye and Riverside are lagging from where they were
Yeah,
this
I
time
know,
last
I
year.
looked at the numbers last year,
Um,
and it's like, wow.
So, and with the kindergarten roundup,
Mhm.
or kickoff, what do we, is it roundup, kickoff? With-
Kickoff.
Yeah,
Kickoff.
with the kindergarten event. We typically have enrollment spike, so we're pretty confident that the numbers are gonna stay pretty close to where they're at.
Right.
Maybe fluctuate a little bit, but not to the point where we'd have to add a section in any buildings.
Yeah.
Are we able to see how many kids are going outside of the district to private schools? Like, I've seen a handful of people say they're sending their kids to NDCL.
We can see that, yes, when NDCL sends us a transportation list.
Okay, so we'll be able
So
to.
those who are eligible for transportation, we can get that. That's not an accurate number, that's the number that we know of. So we can take a look at those. But that doesn't happen until August, but I'd be happy to provide that update.
Okay, and I know there's last minute signups, like some throughout the summer, but some right in August. So, I mean, typically, let's say Melridge is 34 right now, last year they were 43. How many, do we typically see, about 10?
I mean, it
Five?
did change, like Chris mentioned, like the kind of point of the kickoff is to drive that registration early.
Right,
Years ago, when we didn't do that, I mean, it was not uncommon to get 50, 60 kindergarten registrations in August.
yeah,
No, but what was historically, Sin shared that with us, we had her look at that, and I would say it's maybe 10
Yes.
to 15, depending on the building. Maybe 10 in the smaller buildings, maybe 15.
I'm talking total. around-
Oh, total, okay,
He's
so I'm
talking
breaking it down,
district-wide.
I'm breaking
Yeah,
it
you guys
down
are
by
trying to say
building,
something,
yeah. So I think we have, Sin gave us that data for just this reason.
mhm,
For the past 2 years, I don't foresee, like Chris said, it getting over the sections that we have allocated.
Right.
So our numbers are down.
well,
I just know because I ordered the t-shirts and I had to order those t-shirts by like end of July. And when we first started ordering t-shirts, we'd order like 275 because we were at like 260 and then there was this huge jump in the beginning of August but the last couple of years we haven't had that
mhm.
significant jump.
Yeah, because I mean, we're pretty comfortable, like at Melridge, with 34 currently, that would be 17. There's room for growth in those, I mean, to stay at 2, and they've been 2. Buckeye is 28, and that's 14, correct?
Mhm.
So, I mean, even if we got new students, I don't see.
They're
a third
not,
section.
I don't foresee any of these needing to add a section,
Yeah.
even at Riverview at 70.
Right,
we're not gonna, I would doubt that we would see a 30-kid jump.
Yeah, they aren't even hitting
No.
20, they're like 17, 18 in the class.
No, I
So,
think we
they're
are
comfortable.
very comfortable where we're at.
Okay, good. All right, thank you.
Um,
Oh,
preschool
and the last one
programs, yeah.
I put on, there was a meeting with, Roger about some of the, playgrounds, and I had talked with, the principal at Melridge about, whatever we're doing with the preschool playground thing. You know, they have their little trikes, but they really don't have any place to ride them or to have like a paved path, and we're considering a perimeter path, you know, around the fencing or inside the fencing with Riverview, so we're looking at doing that at Melridge as well. But one of the things I wondered about, because this involves your neck of the woods, is I know that projects are sometimes done by our, I just put CTE, but, you know, construction class, but it might involve metal and welding and stuff. That some of the things, like for example, there was like a bus or a fire engine that could be built that they can climb in, and it was kind of cute, and I thought, boy, our construction classes could easily do that. So, and then sometimes, as Ryan said, like with Safety Town, they build those little houses or something. We might be able to consider that, but I don't know who the instructor is. I'm gonna ask if that's something we might be able to take a
Oh,
look
for
at.
sure that is.
I
I don't
mean-
know that we'll be able to do it, I mean, perhaps mid-year, because they're still building in the classroom, or
Yeah.
whatever, you know what I mean? So,
Right.
but
Well,
yeah, I think that's the kind
yeah.
of thing that absolutely, that they could do,
Right.
and we could have them involved in. We already talked about them building all the tables that are gonna go in the courtyard up here,
Right,
that kind of thing. So for sure, I think that would be something we could put on there.
okay. Well, I do have some pictures and things, and, you know, to buy some of this is a lot, and Ryan suggested that, so, and it would be a nice contribution. So, and in touring some of the, like at Lakeland, Mentor, Willoughby, Eastlake, I saw some of the preschool playgrounds, and they had a variety of things that were either ordered online, yeah, kind of the plastic stuff that you can move, or, you know, there were things that were constructed.
Sure, you just tell us what you want, and we can make it happen.
Okay,
Is
all
this
right.
for Melridge or for Riverview or both?
It could be both.
Okay.
Because if they're making it, there could be, you know, a house for each, just a little one.
Well,
And-
eventually, are the preschool's going to Riverview or no?
Well, the thing is, regardless of what happens with Riverview, it's a primary playground. And so, you know, whether it's K1, whether it's pre-K1, but
Then we do one for Buckeye too,
we
right?
want,
If you're just thinking primary.
well,
then
we
probably
could
wanna do one,
consider
yeah.
that.
If we're
I
thinking
mean,
just for primary students.
because it's all part of a budget, but he said you'd really stretch your dollars, because some of these things, you'd spend $3,000 and the materials might cost you $200. You know, he just suggested that it would be a nice collaborative effort.
But just remember, we don't really have the capability to do it at the beginning of this year.
No,
You know what I
it would
mean?
not. I
So
think it
potentially
would
end
be a
of
nice
next year.
spring
Yeah,
thing,
yep,
and it's a nice winter project that they
Yeah.
could work on.
for sure.
Yeah.
Habitat for Humanity has those small houses that they do, and they're
Yeah, I mean, one of
fundraisers.
the things you have to be careful about is, and one of the reasons why when we were at Hale Road, we didn't put a preschool playground in is because you
There's
have
certain safety.
safety, yes.
Yeah, I
There are
have some
certain
concerns about that,
guidelines in
yeah.
terms of safety, but also when it's able to be, you know, transferred someplace else, you still have to have anchored into the ground so
Mhm,
things
yeah.
don't tip over. So there's a lot of consideration that has to go into what's being purchased. The other thing that I would just encourage everybody to be mindful when purchasing any playground equipment is that half of our preschool and then even our school age population, not in every building, but we do have students who can't really access the typical playground equipment. So we might need adapted playground equipment for our students with disabilities.
Yeah.
And now that we're going to have 2 classrooms at Riverview, that's a greater population there. And I do think that needs to be a consideration. And our preschoolers have, 50% of our preschoolers do have disabilities. So, and some of them are physical in nature that they wouldn't be able to just, you know, utilize the preschool equipment that typical students can.
Parkside has the,
We purchased them
Parkside
adapted
has the equipment.
swings.
Yes, the other.
Because Tim asked, because they have 3 classrooms there. So
Right.
they
We should
did
look
purchase
at that for
adapted
Riverview as well.
swings,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, and, I know that they have to be, anchored,
Mhm.
there's no doubt. And the adaptive, I have seen where the swings are, they're not just your sling.
Right.
Yep.
It's like actually, almost looks like a car seat laying back, and I've seen that.
There's some really neat whole adaptive playgrounds where
Mhm.
students with disabilities can play with typicals on the entire apparatus, and they're kind of all designed.
Right,
They're, it might be worth looking at that if we were doing like the preschool playground at Riverview. Maybe look at what that is like.
yeah. And the one that I saw at Willoughby East Lake, I mean, they had a lot of sections of preschool.
I think they
and
have like 10,
Pardon me?
10 classrooms or something
Yeah, they're
like
big.
that.
Yeah,
Well,
9 or 10.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
Mhm.
But they also had an indoor, but under every indoor, like plastic piece of equipment, they had mats.
Mhm.
But outside, they had the mulch.
Mhm.
And so that was interesting. But a lot of the things are just climbable, and you're low to the ground, and it's safe because it's plastic and it's not metal.
Mhm.
Yeah, but they did buy one piece of equipment that had some monkey bars at one end, and it necessitated somebody having to stand there all the time. And so we're avoiding that, as things that are safe where they can't fall, You have to watch some of that equipment. But yeah, I can send some pictures. Do you want me to send them
Sure.
to both of you, all of you? I can send them, just so you have an idea of what it is. Okay, all right, but I like the idea of the perimeter, some type of path. It's like a little track, and they can ride their bikes, but you could also put things, there's like Ryan talked about, a certain kind of paint. You can paint letters, numbers, if you wanted like a hopscotch thing or some other thing, you could put it on there, and then eventually it just
That's at
goes away.
Riverview, you guys are planning on doing
I'm
that?
planning on Riverview and Melridge, but
Oh,
we
Melridge
could do
we're doing
Buckeye.
too? Oh, okay.
It would just
Are we
be
keeping
the
preschool
path.
then?
It would be the path. That's what Gretchen said, is she'd like the path. But if we have the construction class make a house, we could add a few things for
Is
that.
so it's for primary to do the path, not
Well,
just for
mainly,
preschool?
I mean, we were looking at preschool, but it's really primary. It's, because I said it has to work for 3-year-olds, but it could go up to 6-year-old. But, some of the equipment, you look at it and you thought, there's no way you could put a 3-year-old on that without adult supervision. So.
Just, because I haven't been included in any of those
No, I mean, this
conversations.
is
I didn't know if you
preliminary,
had.
this is
Yeah.
preliminary discussions, only because Ryan from Then Design asked what we were thinking, because he had to get something on paper, and I had taken a couple pictures, that's what started it.
Oh, when did those conversations, I'm just curious, because
We just had a quick meeting about that,
Oh,
that's
you and
why
he
I'm
did?
bringing
Yeah.
to
Oh, okay,
you
okay. Yeah, okay.
what was discussed, and going forward, I'd like to,
It also could be
Input.
beneficial to take into consideration teacher input as well as our physical therapists and our occupational therapists.
Right.
Because they do utilize some of the motor equipment and good
Yeah.
playground equipment for certain activities,
Mhm.
and then also the preschool supervisor.
I was gonna say Cheryl being involved in that,
I
having
have
done
not had any
preschool
conversations
for
about it.
hundreds of years.
and
would
you're here
probably
till the
be-
end of
I
July.
feel like it's
Correct.
close to 100. But she probably would be beneficial to have a conversation with Ryan also because of her background in preschool.
Right, but he was mainly just trying to kind of get a gist so that he could draw something in. They don't want to put equipment near classroom windows, and so he thought, well, if there was a track, you want to keep it under where it's not
At
distracting.
Melridge?
At Riverview.
Oh, at Riverview, okay.
Yeah.
Are you get, I'm not sitting here
Okay,
because
so
I feel like
why don't you-
everyone's looking
Do you want
at
to
me
move
while that's
over
on.
so you can see? All right,
No,
so
I'll just move across the.
I will share some of that information with you.
That would be great.
Because,
But you're not looking at doing anything at Melridge for this year? This is all you talked about this spring.
I think it would be spring when we're ready to do, like, I don't even know if we could do I mean, Buckeye might have to wait just because of the construction timetable,
Well,
but,
Buckeye won't have any preschool, I'm talking specifically.
yeah,
preschool.
but I mean for
Yes.
primary, because we have to redo their playground.
Okay.
And as they said, trying to move any existing equipment can be an issue because of anchoring and redoing it. It never becomes, you save money. You don't save money doing it. Okay, so we're ready?
Yeah, so the next item is preliminary, these are very preliminary OST results, and kind of taking a look at it in different ways, just kind of to share some highlights with the committee. The first handout I have is just our traditional, we've done this, and Chuck has done this for the past 8 years, just traditional, taking the OSTs and take the passage rate. It really doesn't tell a great story, it just kind of says if we're meeting the bar or not. The blue highlighted areas in 2025 are above the rate in 2024 for just overall passage rate and the average that's there. What I really think that this does not do is tell a picture of every single test. It tells a picture just of who got above a 3 or that proficient rate, 3, 4, and 5, and what's the percentage versus the overall. And it's are we teaching, I mean, it really just says, are we teaching to the test and are our kids meeting it? So what I did this year is I did a 4-year look back, because that's what we had in the CRS, and that's the state's reporting system. It's take the top 2 pages, because there's 2 pages that go together, of what we're actually measured on in the report card. The report card measures performance index. Performance index takes a look at every single test that's taken and gives it a weight, So if a student scores a proficient or a 3, they get a value of 1. If they score a 4, it's a 1.1. If it's a 5, it's a 1.2. If they're actually subject to accelerated and score a 5, they get a 1.3 rating, so it's a weighted average. If they are basic, they are a 0.7, and if they are limited, they are a 0.4. So you get a lot more points for moving your kids. But all of those tests go into a weighted average. And that's what this chart is now, is the 4-year history of performance index for each of the tests. Our overall rating on the report card is just performance index. It has nothing to do with percentage of passage. Even the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce believe that counting every test is more important than are you just meeting the basic proficiency. So we are looking at where that is. One thing I want to point out is that this is preliminary. What also goes into performance index are all of our AP tests. They get weighted as well into this. We don't have those results yet back, but those will come into our high schools, as well as any students who did not clear or get a medical waiver and are untested. So we will have some of those as well. I know of one that's going to get denied. We know it's going to get denied, but I believe the student has seizures, or there was it's some significant, ridiculous issue that no one should ever have to test, but we're not going to get a waiver.
Yeah.
And we have a couple of those. So we fill out the form every year just for them to say no, and we can say that they're heartless. But we know it's going to happen. So it's an effort. When you look at where we're at, I used a kind of the darker green means the higher the number when you look at the scores. And I did put them out into graphs too, because I do like I know there are chart people in this world.
I am a chart person.
So we are trending definitely in the right direction. The goal and the baseline for, you're doing a great job when you hit 100. That's our goal, and quite frankly, that should be our goal. As a district, I don't believe we've ever hit 100. We have had a few buildings hit 100 from now and then over the past in the history of the report card. Parkside's usually one of them who's typically scores 100. Lamouth was, and I have the report card from it when it hit 100, but that was a number of years back. Mr. Schlick found that and gave it to me.
That's because, let's just say, why did Mr. Schlick find that and give that to you, Dr. Rattino?
That was when I was a principal.
Yeah,
So,
I just wanted to hear it out loud.
But we are always trying to hit 100. So if each grade level hits 100, it means that on a weighted average, we are moving each kid in the right direction, and that's really what we're looking for. Our scores in the high 90s to 100. so really where we're at. Some really good highlights for this year, things to point out. 4th grade math is killing it.
Yeah.
And then the next question is, well, oh my goodness, what happens in 5th grade? The kids just get dumber. Well, no, that's not the case at all. 5th grade's still killing it. It's a much harder test. 5th grade math is fractions, the majority of the test is fractions, decimals, and percents, which used to be 6th grade, they moved it back. It's really hard for kids in 5th grade to learn it. Our teachers are also killing it, they're moving it up.
I was gonna say, we put a focus on that this
And
year.
they're continuing to drive. Our scores dipped last year. They raised that overall score 2 points, which is a significant amount. We're moving kids in ways that we haven't necessarily traditionally moved them, and we're pushing them. If you look at 5th grade science, I mean, 99.75 as a PI is amazing for 5th grade science for an untested, the first time they've taken a science test. Is really good. We're excited to see what that is. Where we see some issues, 6th grade math, we see a definite area of improvement. 7th grade math, 6th through 8 math is areas of definite focus and improvement. I think those are areas that our new curriculum are definitely going to address, and the reasons why we picked to focus on 6th through 8 math is we've got great teachers. I don't believe that they're not teaching good content. I think they just need to work on teaching in a different way. We added more time. We didn't see an impact. So we're going to change how they teach a little bit and the curriculum that they teach based on other best practices and model schools that score well on that. And that's going to take some time to make that. And again, it's going to take time to get the curriculum in and to kind of figure out where the bumps are on the road. But we should see static, if not improved, in those next year. 4th through 6th language arts, that they're going through a curriculum change too, so we do expect those to be stagnant. There will be some implementation issues with, 3rd through, we're gonna have some implementation, but we are putting that new curriculum in.
I was gonna say, let's not say issues. There
Not
will be,
issues.
there will be, implementation,
Yes.
just things to handle. You know what I
The
mean? But
second year
there may be issues,
Yeah.
but there may not be. We
Yeah.
don't know that yet. But in an implementation year.
Second year's always stronger than the first, we
Yeah.
know that. What we think we're going to see is 3rd grade start, because they're with Wit and Wisdom, we should see some of the impact of our science and reading curriculum this year, currently coming to 3rd grade to some of that. What we didn't take a look, and I didn't break out specifically in a lot of this, is the individual sub areas of where our students are showing the most gains or struggling. We do that with teachers individually, but we are seeing some growth in writing in some areas, but really and truly kind of those are the next steps, and that's some of the stuff we look at on our PD days, and we're gonna really focus on having Mrs. Linemember take a real deep dive with our teachers into, hey, how do you read this and how do you adjust your curriculum based on meeting the students where they are and pushing them forward. So on the back side of the chart,
Chris, just to clarify, these numbers could change on this
They can.
chart because
Yeah.
of the inclusion of the AP scores and untested students, right?
Yeah, they will.
So,
They
okay,
will
I
change.
just wanna make sure
One
that
of the
we're
things
clear
to-
on that.
one of the things to highlight, this year, our government and US history students did not take the Ohio State test. They have in every other pass, and you'll notice that the PI basically stay the same. We will focus in and then add in their AP scores, which AP scores get a natural bump anyway, so we should see those numbers rise.
Explain what that means.
So
When
an
you
AP
say they get a
score,
natural
so
bump.
when AP score comes in as a 3,
Yeah.
student scores a 3 on AP score, they get a 4 for the state testing
Right.
value. So if the student scores a 4, they get a 5. If the student scores a 5, they get a 5 anyway.
And that's how it gets
So
recorded
that's
then.
so a 2, a 3, and a 4 kind of get a +1 added to because it's naturally a more rigorous test.
Okay, so that advanced placement starts in what grade?
Our students can take it in 10th,
10th grade.
yes. The other one that I'm not sure how it factors in.
Well, so, I'm sorry, let me interrupt for a second. You can't go by grade levels. So
No.
we have ELA 10th grade, we'll have scores that dump in for that. We'll have history, American history,
Mhm.
scores will dump into that, and we will have government AP scores that dump into that pool.
Okay.
Okay, so it's not by, I just wanna
Yeah,
make sure,
they
because it's
could
a high
take it
school
in an
level.
earlier
It's
grade.
whenever you take
Yeah.
a class, okay?
Right, exactly.
The other ones that do factor in if a student is untested, say a student's missing a government test, but they took government at Lakewood, or Lakeland.
Lakeland.
Lakeland, not Lakewood. But if they take government at Lakeland, that grade converts to a number as well, so those will get converted. So we do have some, the only test that every student in high school has to take are Algebra 1 and ELA 2. So we'll see those scores are all these pure tested scores. The other ones can all be substituted with something else. So if a student takes biology at Lakeland instead of our biology, that score can substitute too.
Okay.
So we can see all kinds of things.
All right, so let's say there's an elementary student who scores at the top end. Is their score the same? It used to be like
So
more points.
if an elementary student scores a 5, they count as a 1.2 on that,
Yeah.
on the PI. If an elementary student is subject accelerated, so they're taking, if it's a third grader taking the fourth grade test, and they score a 5, which potentially they should,
Mhm.
they get a 1.3.
Okay.
If an elementary student who is still subject accelerated scores a 4, their score counts as a 5
Right,
for the performance index. So there's a bump for subject acceleration as well. So any student who's marked as subject accelerated gets that bump to PI as well.
right. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I really want to work with some of the
Mhm.
high end too.
Absolutely.
Because it isn't just the focus on.
And that's one of the reasons why we focus on PI, because it does reach, you want to push those top kids as well,
Mhm. Right,
to push that. So when you look at the next page, the back of the first page is the graph of really and truly performance index over the past 4 years, kind of putting the numbers out there. Although some of them look like they are trending up for the most case. We did peak in 22-23. That was kind of a high year for a lot of those tests. We're looking into what that is. It could also be a testing thing. One thing to note is fourth grade ELA is trending upwards and continuing to trend up, along with third grade ELA has got a general upward trend that we're seeing. An area of concern really and truly is eighth grade. It does look like they're about where they are when they started, so we're going to take a look at that curriculum especially, and some reasons as to why those students kind of stay where they are. It's not just transitional issues. We're working through what really is.
Yeah,
the issue.
and 7th and 8th grade is a focus.
Mhm.
We will be selecting a new curriculum this year, so that is.
right. That's where they're.
That's
Yeah,
what
we knew that was coming anyway, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, and the data shows that we need to look at that, so
Is
that
that
was
where
something.
we've had the Savas math?
No,
well,
this is ELA.
Oh, the
Yeah,
ELA.
yeah, this is
is-
ELA.
Okay, sorry.
ELA, they're still, so 7th
Yeah,
and 8th
how are
grade.
they?
So
Yeah, that's
these
my
are the majority of the first has all new curriculum with the exception of 7th and 8th for next year. So we are focusing on what's gonna fit them and meet their best needs. The second page of the chart is the math performance index kind of overall. And looking at what those are, and again, the green line at the top, that's your fourth grade math, and that group continues to kill it and consistently. Whatever they're doing is working, so we're just gonna keep that going and continue to push them. Right below them is third grade math, and that's for the first time they take a math test on a computer. That's pretty impressive
Oh, yeah.
for where they're coming through, and they're consistently in 95s and above and scoring those, which is phenomenal. And then we saw that dip in 5th grade last year, which raised some flags. So we're continuing to push that. That's a tough test, and they're still pushing them all the way. And again, we had talked about 6th grade. An area to highlight is not on this chart, so we'll get to the next one.
Hold on.
So, and then you look at, we talked about 6 with the trend, with the downward trend, and 7th grade starting to trend up a little bit. I think nothing more than that curriculum's gonna help. And again, 8th grade, just like we saw in ELA, the class trended down for a year. I'm wondering if it's a one-time anomaly with an 8th grade class. And sometimes you have classes that just don't score as well as others. And that can be consistent. So we'll look at a cohort model for that to kind of see where they're at traditionally from an 8th grade standpoint, and kind of pick that out and really try to push up the whole class. But sometimes you just have classes like that. So on the last page is the high school scores. This is one where you really see the light blue line is one to point attention to. This is an area that we are really happy about to focus. This is Algebra 1. So our Algebra 1 scores this year are the highest they've been. A PI of 91, which is really good. And when you look at, so Algebra 1 is one of our two tests that you have to have competency on. Over 95%, I think it was, of our students who took the Algebra 1 test this year scored competent or above. It's a really great number. We're really proud of our Algebra 1 teachers and the work that they're putting in for that mastery. Our both Algebra 1 and Geometry is rising a little bit. Geometry is the lowest scoring test in the state, always and traditionally. We are above the state average. It's still not where we need to be. We can continue to drive that through. Geometry is taken in the 10th grade year. It's the 4th test of sophomores in a grueling week in the year. They have to take the most tests out of any. It does not mean anything if they pass it. They don't get, it doesn't count for graduation. It doesn't count for anything. It's in there for a federal requirement. The hope is that now with everything that's going on at the federal Department of Education, that Ohio is going to reach out for a waiver and actually have this test removed. They tried to about 4 years back and it was denied. So I think they're going to try to do it again to have the geometry testing requirement removed, because the requirement says you have to have a math test in high school. And the reason Ohio thinks algebra should be the math test in high school, and that's what they use, but there are, even to our test at some point, there are a lot of 8th graders who take algebra in 8th grade. So that doesn't technically qualify as a high school test. So that's why they have to keep geometry, and you see it being the lowest scoring, because students who struggle, it's a different type of math. Students who struggle in math are really working to get algebra. And some of our students are taking actually the algebra test, and then they take the geometry test in the same week. Some students do that as well, because they really need that score on the algebra test. So it's a challenge and a struggle.
So that, like, if you're taking it early and it doesn't count as high school, it's still not treated like elementary where it's grade accelerate, like a subject acceleration.
It
Like
is to some
wouldn't count.
extent. So it does count, but this is the one that you have to, so this is, of the tests that matter, when I talk about matter, really, it's the 3rd grade reading test. If you don't get a certain
Yeah.
score on that, there's a consequence.
Yeah,
And then the other, there's only 3 of them. So of all of them, there's 3 of them. There's that test, and then there's the Algebra 1 test. And if you don't get a certain score on that, you don't show competency for graduation. And then there's the high school ELA 2 test. Every other test, if you do not score proficient or above, the consequences really are kind of moot. I mean, there are some that if you score proficient on biology or above, you get the state science seal. But you can get the state science seal by taking chemistry and getting a B. If you score proficient or above on both government and American history, or score B's in the class, you can get the citizenship seal. But you don't have to have that to graduate. You only have to have 2 seals to graduate. So there are ways around it. The 2 scores that you have to have are algebra and ELA 2. And you don't actually have to be proficient, you have to have a competent score, which is, it's about a 2.5 if you were going with numbers.
okay.
So that's what makes it a little bit different and challenging. The other ones that are out there really and truly, like geometry or biology leads to a seal, U.S. government history leads to a seal, and then you've got geometry, which does absolutely nothing. So kids get nothing from it. It's the last math test. It's always the last test they take their sophomore year with this, and they are exhausted by that time.
Yeah.
So they're not. We try to give them to get their best effort. They're improving their scores and they're continuing to move forward. But it's also a tough test. And historically, in Ohio, it's always the lowest.
Yeah.
And Ohio is, like I said, I'm hoping they move to dump it, because even the people at the state are like, we're doing it because we have to and checking a box.
Okay.
So the other thing I wanted to share is we take a look a lot at, so PI takes all the scores and all the performance levels, and we take a look at what they look like based by school, but also by kind of, the individual level. So I put it in, I am a pivot table geek. Love me a good pivot table and pivot chart. So one of the things I did is take these tests and made a dynamic, yeah, made a true dynamic chart for kind of just to look at, just do some brief comparisons. And I want to just share what we look for, you know, in a good dispersal. So this is 5th grade language arts. I'm not going to go through every test because that would make this meeting way too long and Melissa would tune out.
I did. I was
To be
like,
completely
maybe we
honest.
could just narrow this down. Yesterday we were talking about this and do
But
some
I'm-
highlights,
yeah.
and then you can always see.
So I'm highlighting 5th grade language arts in this case because we moved Lamouth to 5th grade from Buckeye and Melrose to Lamouth. Then we didn't move Lamouth stayed the same. And really wanted so now we have 3 groups of 5th grade, and they're killing it. And what you want to see in this Lamouth and Parkside have the ideal distribution. Your red is the smallest and your red is a 1. Your dark green is the tallest, and that's a 5. And when you look at 5th grade ELA, when the chart goes up like that, that means you're killing it. And that's a great thing. Even Riverview is nothing to poo-poo. You know, when they're green, yellow, and I guess that's light green. It doesn't show up that great on the TV. But when they're 3 on the right hand, their 3, 4s, and 5s are higher, and those bars are higher than the red and the orange. That's just phenomenal work, and that means that they're doing the right thing, and our 5th graders are coming out of there, and they're doing some great things. So those are, you know, really when you're looking at those areas that we're hitting, that's what you're going to get a good PI, and you look at how that kind of equates to the whole school. So that's a really strong.
So Chris, real quick, this is showing the number of kids at each score level.
At each scoring
correct?
level. So it's a
Okay.
percentage at each scoring level. So when you look at your distribution, it's just the straight percentage of who scored a 5, who scored a 4. In a normal curve, if it was truly a normed test, in a normal curve, what you would expect is your 3s to be the highest, and kind of the 2 and the 4 to be about the same. And that's what the test is designed to do. In this case, our instruction is really hitting it more. We're doing a great job. So it's a true area of success and one to look at. I'm going to go to 3rd grade because that's the one we have to have. And so we'll talk about 3rd grade reading and take a look at that. And this one of the things to point out about this one, the schools are different. And this is where achievement levels don't actually tell the whole story. So when you look at where we're at with these achievement levels, you see we're still struggling in Buckeye and Melridge. And our students in Buckeye and Melridge are not necessarily scoring proficient on the reading test. But what we look at here is, okay, why? And what we did, the first thing I did in this is I went to the MAP reports and I looked at, well, okay, where
MAP
they come.
is what?
MAP is our achievement test. So it's our normed achievement test, and it tests language arts as well. And we test them 3 times a year in MAP, and we look at where they started and where they ended. When I looked at Buckeye and Melridge's growth, they were in the 60th and the 62nd percentile in the nation in growth. So they're above expected growth, all this. So we moved the kids. The kids just came in a little bit lower. So we had a lot farther to move them to get to where they need to be. In Parkside moved growth, their growth was expected, but those kids came in at I want to say it was the 65th percentile, whereas Buckeye and Melridge came in around the 50 and the 48th and the 50th. So there's a big gap in where they're coming in. So, you know, our expectation to move them, the bar is still the same for all of these kids. There's just a lot farther for some of them to go, and our teachers did a great job in really moving them. When you look at Riverview and being kind of pretty much normally distributed across the board, this is what we really want to see in some of this. We would like to see this red down. As we continue the MTSS process, this red bar is going to shift more, and it'll shift more, but what it could happen is it could shift to the 2, it could shift to that orange level and not all the way across, because you have to kind of, like, they're making gains along the way, but we're seeing this shift. If I looked at this in the fall, it's a completely different shift, and we saw a lot of growth from this group. So we're not to where we want to be at the end, but we're moving our kids. And if I looked at this, if I put the kindergarten readiness assessment up here where they came from, and I didn't, but if I did and put that up there, you would see these numbers be a whole lot of red at Buckeye, Melridge, and Riverview. We just do, where they don't have the prerequisite skills coming to us to be ready for literacy. But we move them a long way. So kudos to our teachers for moving them to where they are. We know we have to move them, but we're doing it, and it's taking, you know, we're doing a nice job with it, so we're moving them around. When you look at fourth grade language arts in the same aspects, so we'll take a look at fourth grade, this will clear. We do get, Global Connection Academy is a school, that's a charter school. That school would be, that's probably one student. They would be with us, but they go to Global Connection, so they take them out. There we go. So looking at ours now, fourth grade, a year later, granted, different group of kids, but still, we're taking those teachers, we're taking those kids now, and the red is shifting. They've got more, for a couple of things are happening here. Number one, they have more practice taking the tests. So they've now taken 4 tests instead of just 2. Because the English language arts test is the second test they ever really take on a computer where they're expected to write. So now they have more experience taking the test, and you look where we're at, and we are clearly moving this and moving our greens and our dark greens and doing the right thing and shifting us in the right direction, and we're going into some really, you know, good stuff. So yeah, third grade is a big, but MTSS, we're continuing those processes. We're continuing to teach kids what to do. We're continuing to kind of provide those interventions along the way, and we're moving. When I talked about fifth grade, we're continuing to shift them up to where they are now. And when I bring up sixth grade, in sixth grade you kind of see a backslide a little bit. We used to blame it on transition. We know it's more than that. We know a part of it's curriculum and resources. We added time last year. That did not make the difference that we wanted. So adding the new curriculum and a more rigorous curriculum and a more structured curriculum, we do believe is going to help. But when we put up sixth grade in here, I'll put up sixth grade language arts. One school, we go back to seeing, all right, we're about an even distribution, and we're not seeing the driving that we want. Really, where this bar should be a whole lot higher. So my hypothesis for next year is that when we add the new curriculum and really put that rigorous structured curriculum in, this will shift, and this will shift in a different way. What we did see in sixth grade we started to look at is their writing scores improved. Vastly, but again, writing's a part of this assessment, but it's not the major part of the assessment. So they're missing some major components. So we're going to work with them on looking at historical test blueprints, what the blueprint is, and really truly how to kind of work that curriculum in to kind of improve it all the way. I wanted to show algebra because, again, this is an area that we are really happy about.
Isn't it challenging though to compare the sixth grade this year to the fifth grade this year? I mean, we really should be looking at, did that sixth grade class make
So we do.
improvements since
So
then?
we look at that, and that comes with the value added model. So we look at value added, and did they keep their place in line? We also see a dip there where they lose their place in line, which and we see that especially in all the transitions from fifth to sixth. We start to see them. We saw a large chunk from fourth to fifth too last year, which prompted us to really make those moves. I think we'll see a change in it. Now value added, where we have a down, you're not going to see the change in the report card as much because value added is a 3-year composite, but we got to start digging out of the hole somehow. So you'll see my prediction is we'll see some 1-year growth in some pockets there that we're really pushing some things. Because our PI is raising. So value add, we're talking about moving all students, not just setting and really hitting the bar. Algebra 1,
One thing.
Yeah.
When we do this for the public, when the report card is finalized in September, I don't know if you remember a year or two ago, and I don't know if I did it last year, Denise, I keep a sheet of the enrolled year so that you can look at kids how we've done in third grade, but then you can also follow that cohort of students.
Right.
So we'll give that to you guys once the numbers are finalized in September, so you can look at it both ways. You know what I mean? How we've done historically across the board, just in third grade, but then how did that cohort of students do as they moved through the grade
Right,
levels?
so then you're comparing apples.
Yes,
to apples.
yeah, so
Yeah.
you're watching that track
Right.
of kids, yep.
So there's a lot, I mean, we could spend 4 hours.
I know.
Which is why I tried to rein him in.
I can tell. he
He's
loves-
coming into the home
I
stretch.
appreciate it. So Algebra 1, again, this is 8th and 9th graders who are taking Algebra 1, and you look at where we're at. This is this is what, if I said, what's a regular distribution, here it is. This is what you look for when you look at an Algebra 1 test. You're seeing, the majority of your group right in the middle. With doing this makes the perfect, this is, when you talk about a norm test, we are norm.
There is our.
There it is, and it's really something to look, because all of this 22% in here, they're not proficient, but again, more than the majority of them have scored competent, so they don't ever have to take the Algebra 1 test again. They're done. They've met their competency requirements. When you add and just take out the 9th grade, and so we go into the 8th grade, these are our honors kids and our top kids, and you're seeing this is what we want to see. We want to see this actually higher, and this one, these two switch. But we're seeing that we're still pushing our top kids.
Yeah.
We're making our kids move. I think we might even have a couple perfects. I know we've had perfects across the board. We saw, I want to say Lamuth math had like 5 or 6 perfects that they just, and the problem with perfect is great, it's awesome, but in order to make a year's growth, you have to be perfect again.
Yeah.
And so that's, there's a plus and a minus with it, but these are just, what we're seeing really are just some great, absolute wonderful things that our teachers are doing, and they're using this, and our algebra teachers really use this data to drive their instruction, and we saw what had happened, and the scores continuing to go up, so we're happy with that. ELA 2 is in 10th grade. This is the other one that they all take. Again, it's a bell curve. This is a little bit skewed, but it's still, this is a bell curve. This is kind of where our students are. They fit in that bell, but we're still pushing them. This one's a little bit skewed to the positive, which we like to see, because we're still continuing to push it, but we're doing good things. And it's something to really be excited about. And the last one is, brag on a little bit.
ELA 2 is, that could be taken by
That
a
is-
child who's younger, right?
It can be, but it's typically just
Typically
10th
not.
grade. It's the
Okay.
typical 10th grade, and we don't subject accelerate in ELA nearly as much as we do math. It can typically be met easily with differentiation,
Okay.
but it's something that we don't.
That doesn't mean they're all in ELA 2 classes, because
Yeah.
some students are in AP classes or CCP
Yeah,
classes.
right.
They still take this, they have
Our
to take.
our
the
10th
ELA
graders
2.
will
Exactly.
take, so it doesn't matter what English you're in, when you're in a 10th grade, they take it. So our 10th grade AP Sem kids, who they don't necessarily teach the ELA 2 curriculum, they teach the AP Sem curriculum. They take the ELA 2 test, they all pass it, but they take it. The majority
Okay.
of those top kids could take it the first day of school and pass it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the reality of it.
Okay.
Our CCP
Our
kids in
CCP
10th grade
kids.
actually take it in December, because they have finished what equates to their 10th grade year of English in the middle of the year, because they're actually getting 2 years worth of high school credit when you take a CCP class for a full year. So a lot of those CCP kids will take the test in December.
Okay,
So
so
just
they
get-
can't take it earlier. Well, because they are,
It's
they
not
have to
they
be-
can, they do, because they have
Yeah.
finished what we
When
equate to the
When they get their
ELA 2
second
curriculum.
English credit, they
Right.
take it.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
when they're on track to earn their
Right.
second high school English credit.
right,
This was just one that kudos, because our 5th grade science killed it. I mean, not that it, I mean, it's a, hey, we have to have a science test in 5th grade, so we threw it out there, but when 44% of your kids at Lamuth who just moved there and transitioned score a 5 on science, whatever's being taught in that science classroom is killing it. 42% at Parkside, and still a third of Riverview kids. I mean, it's just really proud of them. The last one I'll show you, which is,
You said that the last
I know, but I
time.
forgot about 4th grade math. So just to show 4th grade math, because this one is pretty cool too. I mean, that's over 50% of our students at Melridge, Parkside, and Riverview scored a 5. And that's I mean, I don't know what else to say,
Yeah,
other than, I mean,
They're a
they're,
very strong team.
yeah,
That
they're
fourth grade math team,
unbelievable.
as is the third grade math team.
So
They're just a really
that's
strong team.
just good stuff, and it's going to carry up, it just, those foundational skills are so important. And carrying up, and then the fifth grade, again, fifth grade's very different than fourth grade, so as we continue to build that into what it looks like, we're gonna continue to have that foundation that we are going to see these scores come up, and we're starting to see them. And there's going to come a time when it just hits. And we are on that precipice of it getting close, because we're starting to see the PI increase, we're starting to see less amounts of kids scoring ones and twos, and we're on that borderline. As soon as they get to that 3, it pops. And so we're starting to, it's bubbling, but it takes some time. So that's kind of where we're at. So that is kind of all I have to say. Any questions on those? And I brought-
all right, well,
I
thank you
do,
so
I
much for
just
doing that.
wanna end with two, and with Chris and I looking at all of this data, and we do the celebration piece, you know what I mean, it's fun, but we also are recognizing where our weak areas are, you know what I mean, and we'll highlight those a little bit more in September and talk a little bit more about what we're really doing. We briefly touched on it, some of it is the curriculum, some of it'll be the PD that we do next year, but we really are digging into where do we see the areas of concern and what can we do to support those teachers, you know what I mean, to raise levels across the board. So we're seeing some of it come to fruition. We know we have some work to do along the way, but I just wanna recognize that we celebrate, but we also are
Yeah,
digging
totally.
and looking
And I-
at where we need to improve.
I would say too, I've been doing a lot of data work, and I teach a course on it, and one of the things that we struggle with as teachers typically is we always focus on the bad. So what we did, we focus directly to where do we need to improve, where do we improve, and really we don't take time to celebrate the good
Oh, yeah.
and to celebrate what's great and what's happening, to celebrate our wins. And so to continue to kind of pump those up and celebrate those wins, and there's some of them are small wins and some of them are really big wins. But continue to do that, and knowing that it's one point at one time, with one group of kids that potentially were in a good mood or kind of whatever, and a handful of kids makes a difference.
Oh, yeah.
And in the sample size we're working with, you know, especially at our smaller buildings, 3 kids make a huge difference in that. And if 3 kids have a bad day, or if they're not on right, or they didn't eat breakfast, or whatever it might be, that makes a difference, and that changes a lot. And, you know, in spite of all of that, they're still taking the test. In spite of, you know, whatever else you might have, you know, you can break an arm and be excused, but if you have a terminal disease, they expect you to take the test,
Yeah.
which is ridiculous. But that's the system, we're gonna deal with it, and we're gonna continue to celebrate the wins where we have them, and I think we've got enough of them.
For sure. Yeah, and the variables when you're introducing new curriculum and getting that
We are,
solidified.
to say that, you know, we know we're doing the right things, we're seeing it in the back, we're seeing it kind of get in that framework. Is it going to show up immediately on our report card? No, the report card's not set up that way. We'll see some of it show up, we won't see it in value added for a couple years, but we know what we're doing. We're putting the right things in place when we diagnosed it to get to that. Eventually, is it going to hit and pop? Yes, it will.
Right.
Because we've got the right people in the right place, and we're doing the right things, and we're
Right.
driving in the right direction.
Okay.
And just
And
one
then-
last thing, that 9-year trend you got, the very first sheet,
Yeah.
is literally pure scores when they first come out. There's nothing,
Right.
those aren't final scores, those are
Yeah,
literally.
just Chuck does
Oh, I-
that,
Yeah,
preliminary.
those-
Gotta
those are not
scrub the
final.
data.
Yeah,
I get it.
it's just,
And we will, and this includes kids who weren't, I mean, so when the state finalized it, you have to be in the seats for so many hours, and you don't get credit for that. So we still go through, and all summer we spend and scrub it, and that's why we're lucky to have someone like Elise who will
Yeah,
send these
Elise.
spreadsheets back to Cheryl and Melissa, and they'll reply back, what am I looking at? And then Elise will try to define it, and
Yeah.
I still don't get it. But we work it out.
Yeah, Elise is key. And then we're done with the PD for the science of reading, or does that continue into this year?
Someone has
No,
to take their-
the state requirement for science of reading, now the teachers had to have it done.
Okay, so
It had to
that's
be done by June 30th. if they
Okay,
wanted
and then
to teach
with the
this
new
year.
curriculum where you have your PD days scheduled for next year, but then are there additional times, especially if it's a particular subject, like you were able to fit in some of it this spring and it wasn't a generalized PD day, it was just specific to.
No, that's what I talked about earlier in the
Yeah,
meeting,
right.
the learning labs for wit and wisdom.
Okay,
The,
all that.
yeah, the
It's built
extra
in.
days for
Built in.
CPM,
Okay.
yes.
All right, sounds great. All right, so anything else? Okay, well, thank you for meeting, and do we need to set up any other meetings?
Okay, I'm not going to have anything to talk about in
No,
July.
no,
I was
I
gonna
figured
say-
August.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Do we, yeah, we can get, that probably is best, although, how about if I send an email out, only because I am currently putting August meetings on the calendar, like our
Okay,
district
so you
meetings
can
and our.
fit 'em in.
Yeah, let me look at that, and then we'll look at what days we might be. Is there a day of the week that works better, or is it just, let me shoot some dates out at 7:30 and see what works?
Well, I know you have all your other advisory meetings, but, I mean, Thursday mornings usually work for me, but I don't know about you, Lori.
So I'm actually, I can try, it depends on.
It depends, okay, that's what I
I
wanted
can
to
be
know.
flexible,
I'll
but
shoot out a
still
couple of
7:30.
options. Yes, we'll keep it at 7:30 if that works for early. I
7:30
mean,
works.
Yeah, okay.
But I can tell you, I am in Michigan from the 7th to the 12th, and I'm moving to Kent the rest of that week, so I'm not available the whole 7th through the 15th.
7 to 15 for curriculum.
Oh, I gotta get kid to YSU.
Sometime in there.
I gotta move no kids this year, I'm
Oh.
so
Oh, that's the
excited.
20th,
Okay,
Okay,
I
all
will look
set?
at perhaps
Just so
the
you know.
week after, we'll see, and I'll see when the board meetings are scheduled, and usually
Yes.
we have, because the other thing we could do is if we squeeze in, I won't have a ton to talk about, I mean, we can meet, you know what I mean? But maybe we say, maybe it's a half hour before a board meeting.
Yeah.
That we do a quick August meeting as we're getting ready to roll, because there won't be a lot, I mean, there just won't be a lot to talk about in August either.
Okay, so
Okay.
Cheryl, then this is
Yeah,
your
it can
Don't
be-
worry
last
about my schedule.
official
Yeah.
meeting.
Well, I
Stop it! I'm already making her
And-
come to graduation. I might make her come to the programs meetings.
Yeah, and Chuck, this is your last official meeting for curriculum.
Yeah, since we're not doing it
All
July.
right, well, thank you so much for all
I'm
you.
having
I reminded them that these meetings are open to the public.
Yeah, I know, you can come in anytime.
You
All
can
right,
bring
well,
snacks.
obviously at the next meeting, we'll be seeing, the new director, yeah, Camille. So, and that would be her first meeting, okay. And whatever you want her to cover, you'll let her know, I guess.
She
Okay,
will.
all right, so thank you everyone for meeting.
Thank you.
It is 8:37.